Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the April meeting of the Finance Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Are there any public speakers, Doug?
Yes, sir. There's one. Murray Bowden is here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk about the procurements for Metro North and Long Island Railroad, but before I do, I'd like to make you all aware that there are a number of...
If we could turn the mic on for Mr. Bowden, I don't think it's on.
Oh. 1, 2, 3? Better?
Thank you, that's on.
I'm going to talk about the procurements for Metro North and Long Island. But before I do, I want to bring it to the attention of the chair that there are a number of members of the board that are holdovers for at least 6 years. If you're a holdover for 6 years, you're not an independent thinker. You can't make a decision because you like to hold your job and you're beholden to whoever appoints you. So the issue of holdovers for people that's here, I've been here longer than 6 years, but I'm not a holdover. I'm just an independent troublemaker. The procurements for Metro North and Long Island Railroad are vastly outdated. They're buying the wrong railroad cars. They're buying married pairs, which were now 20 years ago. We can't stop them. Reading through your agenda here, I see that this committee passes on what they buy. How do you stop them from buying the wrong cars? Well, the New York City Transit has ordered their first open railroad car where there are no petitions between the cars. Those kind of cars are used all over the world. I used them 5, 10 years ago in Paris and various other places. Why can't we have them here? Why does Metro North continue to come in here with procurements that are vastly outdated? Now, that's a problem that has to be addressed, and I don't know how to address it. I no longer ask for meetings with anybody. I've documented all of the recommendations I've made. They've been passed by a number of legal departments, and if anybody wants advice on where to find the legality to those suggestions I've already put into the record, I'll be glad to meet with you. But the next meeting is, you call me, I'll be there. I'm not calling you anymore.
Next we have the work plan. There are no changes to the work plan. We need to, let's see.
Slow down a little bit.
Yep.
Okay, are there any more public speakers?
No.
Okay. Next, can we have the approval of the March 21st meeting minutes? Any comments or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Doug, now we can have the work plan.
Yeah, there are no changes to the work plan. Next we have Budget Watch. This month's Budget Watch, we're going to focus on March operating results and subsidy results through April. For the month, passenger revenue were favorable by $6.9 million, or 1.3%. Ridership was slightly greater than projected for all the agencies. Overall, year-to-date results remain below budget by $23 million, or 1.6%. Those results capture the lower New York City Transit fare box revenue in January and February, which, if you remember, they were impacted by the Jonas snowstorm and extremely cold weather during the President's weekend. Toll revenue, on the other hand, was very favorable for the month and year-to-date. For the month, it was favorable by $5.3 million, or 3.5%. Year-to-date, it's favorable by $21 million, or 5.1%. That continues to be favorably impacted by low gas prices and very favorable weather, especially in February, that didn't have the same impact that it did for New York City Transit subway ridership. Moving to expenses, also a favorable picture. Overall expenses were lower for the month and year-to-date. Year-to-date preliminary expenses are $94 million, or 3.5% favorable to budget. About half of that, $46 million, is due to lower energy prices, and most of the other portion is due to the timing on the costs of contractual services. Costs will probably be made up later in the year. Overtime costs were mostly on budget in March and year-to-date, with the exception of the Long Island Railroad, which incurred higher costs for rail and tie work in March. New York City Transit was slightly favorable for the month, which was good news, It remains slightly unfavorable year-to-date because those numbers still contain the impacts necessary to get ready and clean up for the Jonas storm. Debt service was $69.2 million, or 10% favorable to budget. Both the March and year-to-date variances reflect lower than budgeted variable rates, the refunding of transportation revenue and TBTA bonds, and the timing of new money bond issuances. Moving to subsidies. Petroleum business tax receipts for April were $15.4 million, or 38% favorable. The year-to-date receipts were favorable by $8.5 million, or 4%. That's a very volatile tax, so it's really too early to tell if those are truly favorable results or impacted by timing. Moving to PMT, last month we reported that the collections were $10 million unfavorable, but we also said that it was a short reporting month and we expected that it would be made up this month. Well, that in fact happened, and in fact total receipts are now $13.1 million favorable, which is 2.5% favorable, so there was a $23 million swing versus the budget, so that's good news. Real estate transaction taxes were slightly favorable for the month and year-to-date. The year-to-date variance is $15 million, or 3.3% favorable. So overall, I'm going to try to summarize those numbers. We achieved positive results for the month in every major Budget Watch category, and year-to-date also very positive with the exception of that lower New York City Transit fare revenue from January and February. We do want to caution you, though, that we've had a steady uptick in real estate transaction tax revenue, which there are some risks there. While collections so far in 2016 have been 4% favorable, a recent Bloomberg news story reported that the level of commercial real estate transactions in New York City may actually be on the decline. The report cited first quarter 2016 transactions, which had the lowest tally since the third quarter of 2014. The report further noted brokerage firm projections that transactions could drop by 30% this year. So we just want you to keep that in mind. And that's Budget Watch. Are there any questions? Okay, Finance Watch. Yep.
Thank you. Finance Watch is on page 20 of your committee materials today. We have a couple transactions to report. The first is the issuance of $700 million MTA transportation revenue bond anticipation notes. This transaction was very successful. As you can see here, we had multiple firms winning parts of the notes, the sale of the notes. We had a total of 113 bids submitted by approximately 13 different firms. As you can see here, the best bid being submitted by Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner, and Smith at a 0.562%, all the way down to the last bid that was able to capture notes by Citigroup at a 0.67. The all-in true interest cost was a 0.61% for the notes, and these will come due next February 1st, and of course at that time we'll take the notes out with an issuance of long-term bonds. So we're very pleased with the significant participation there from the underwriting community. Just to wrap up on the remarketing of $150 million dedicated tax fund variable rate bonds, subseries 2002B1. This was a credit substitution. The exiting bank was replaced by the new bank. In this case, it was Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi standing in, and that transaction has been closed and is operating as we would expect it to. Coming up, we have an issuance of $500 million dedicated tax fund bonds that we'll be issuing sometime in the month of May, and this will be a $500 million issue to take off a previously issued ban. And we do expect that to also be a green bond. Lastly, we have a fuel hedge that was executed on March 29th for 2.8 million gallons of ULSD. The winning bid was submitted by Macquarie Group at an all-in price of $1.38 per gallon, and we did have our other bidding counterparties also participating in the trade. And so if there's no other questions, that concludes Finance Watch. Okay.
John? I'm sorry, Mr. Ballin?
Quickly, could you remind me the anticipated schedule for the underwriter and financial advisor RFPs?
Sure. The underwriter RFP is on the street as we speak. Proposals are actually due tomorrow, and then we'll take some time. The scoring committee will take time to review the proposals. We're expecting a significant submission. And we'll continue to score the proposals, schedule oral interviews in the summer, in the June-July timeframe. And then we expect to come to the board in September, again, assuming we hold to our schedule with our recommendations on the underwriters. The financial advisor RFP, again, we want our current financial advisor to participate in that underwriter selection, so we'll be issuing that RFP later on in the summer with the goal of hopefully bringing a recommendation to the board in the October timeframe on the financial advisor.
And if you could please refresh my recollection, when is it that we're opening up the competition for FA or adding another one?
That would come with the recommendation from the committee at the October timeframe when we've had all the proposals and the interviews and we have a sense of what we want to recommend.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Okay, Doug?
Now I'm moving to MTA headquarters and all agency items. The first is the 2015 annual investment report. The staff summary appears on page 32. We're asking the board to approve the MTA 2015 annual investment report and to approve the MTA all agency investment guidelines. The investment report and guidelines are on director's desk, exhibit book, and can be found on the MTA website at mta.info.
We need a motion. Second, any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
We have two MTA headquarters report and information items. The first is the MTA annual report on variable rate debt, which will be presented by Pat McCoy.
Okay, thank you. The presentation is in the exhibit book section of your director's desk this afternoon, and it begins on page 14 of that document. Do we have the? Okay, we have it up. Okay. So our variable rate debt policy of this board is that no more than 25% of the aggregate principal amount of debt outstanding can be in the variable rate mode. And that policy has remained in place since it was put in place in 2004. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the green slice of the pie here. Variable rate debt is $2.72 billion of our total portfolio of outstanding debt. And as you can see, the majority of our debt is in the fixed rate mode, 85% or $31.3 billion. We also have a synthetic fixed rate debt of $2.4 billion and then a small issuance of term rate bonds, less than just at 1% of our portfolio. We have a very diversified portfolio of variable rate debt that includes floating rate notes, $2 billion there. We have daily bonds at $951 million, weekly VRDBs at $1.8 million, and auction rate securities at $252 million. This is the entire universe of those variable rate bonds, both the hedged and the unhedged, just to give you a sense of the product diversification in the portfolio. Again, variable rate demand bonds is the majority. Sorry, go ahead.
That last slide.
Yes.
Add there.
Yeah.
That whole pie is the tiny little piece of variable rate that was in the previous pie, correct?
This is, yeah, let me go back. That's both the orange and the green together.
Okay.
Again, because the synthetic fixed rate debt is synthesizing a rate on an existing variable rate bond, we wanted to show you the product mix that includes both pieces of that pie.
Yeah. Right, got it, thank you.
And then, of course, the small little sliver of auction rate securities, $252 million there. Again, the majority of our variable rate bonds are variable rate demand bonds, either in weekly or daily mode, supported by commercial banks through letters of credit. In a couple cases, we do have standby bond purchase agreements on our higher rated TBTA bonds. We have floating rate notes of $2 billion, and that product has really been quite effective in allowing us to avail ourselves of the short end of the yield curve. And then, of course, as I said, auction rate securities, while we've shed the majority of those securities out of the portfolio. We have a small sliver of them that remain performing well, and we're going to continue to watch those. We have contingency plans in place. Should rates spike up and those bonds become uneconomic, we would obviously take action to change their mode. This gives you a window of our variable rate debt over time. You can see in the blue bars, you see the nominal amount of variable rate bonds outstanding, and the green line shows you the percentage of those bonds across the entire portfolio. As you can see, in 2008, when we were coming out of the financial crisis, as the financial crisis hit, a lot of our, at that time, a lot of our auction rate bonds had to be fixed out, and so you see the percentage of the portfolio dropping down. And we've remained fairly steady at about 7% of the portfolio in unhedged variable rate debt over this time, since really 2011. This is the best picture I can paint for you of the value of the variable rate bonds. Here on the left side, you see the 30-year tax-exempt bond rate, and the blue line shows you the actual performance over time, and the average is approximately 3.5%. Over this window from 2011 to date. To the right of that, you see the SIFMA rate, which is the Securities Industry Financial Markets Association high-grade index of variable rate demand bonds. And as you can see over the same time period, while there's been greater volatility, the rate that we've seen and that the market has seen is about a 0.1%. So while there's greater volatility, the actual rates we're seeing are very attractive and continue to be an important part of the portfolio. And this just gives you a sense of our variable rate bonds performance over this reporting period the past year. And you can see the daily average, which is our blue line, and our MTA variable rate bonds average rate of 0.72%, again, over the entire period. Some of the indices we're looking at here, the revenue bond index performed over this period at a 4.18%. MMD, which is the municipal market data high grade index, performed at just 3%. 30-year Treasury over this period averaged at a 2.84%, and the one-year Treasury at a 0.32%. And of course, the SIFMA was at a 0.03%. So again, as the other slide showed better than this, there's been higher volatility, but the absolute rates we're seeing are just extremely compelling and, again, very attractive for the MTA's portfolio. Our work plan going ahead, you can see that, the thing about the variable rate portfolio is we need to continually take care of it, monitor it, remarket transactions, and so forth. As you can see, we've got our work plan cut out for us. This year, that $263 million, I'll just forward to that schedule. That's broken up into 5 different transactions that we'll need to do to deal with those bonds. But again, we've managed this very effectively over the history of the program, and we expect to continue to do so going forward. So that concludes the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hearing none, move on to procurements, I think, next.
We also have another information item. We have the draft of the MTA financial statements for the 12-month ended December 2015. That's on Director's desk in the exhibit book, and the information can also be found on the MTA website at mta.info. That draft will be presented to the Audit Committee later today. Next, we have procurements. Angel Barbosa.
Thank you, Doug. Good morning. So for headquarters, there are 5 competitive procurements for a grand total of $71.6 million. There are 2 procurements that I'd like to speak to very quickly. We are seeking board approval for an award to Payment Tech Services. Payment Tech Services will provide merchant services, which includes optional services for a period of 5 years, with 5 one-year renewal options to be exercised at MTA's sole discretion for a total amount not to exceed of $29 million. These merchant services actually provide for the transactional transactions that cover our customers' charges on their debit cards and credit cards and all our tolls and whatnot. So it's a significant procurement. The next procurement I'd like to highlight is actually an amendment to the choice distribution contract. We're looking for the board to approve an amendment to Metro North's previously board-approved, multi-agency competitively awarded miscellaneous procurement contract with Choice. Choice supplies hardware and fasteners. This amendment will do a few things for us. First, we're looking to exercise 1 year of the previously approved 2-year options from May 31st, 2016 to May 31st, 2017. We're looking to add additional funding in the not-to-exceed amount of $12.3 million. Please make note that the Choice contract and existing related contracts in this particular category have been selected for transition to management under MTA HQ procurement in support of procurement, the future procurement consolidation. So exercising year 1 of the previously board-approved 2-year option will allow MTA HQ procurement to develop a hardware and fasteners category strategy, execute an all-agency competitive RFP in the second quarter of 2016, and transition to a new supplier if required. Of note as well for this contract is you'll note in the summary, in the staff summary, there's been higher utilization of this contract due to increased utilization for new buses that we've acquired. Also for maintenance in terms of Metro North's added 405 M8 fleet rail cars and further support of Long Island Railroad's fleet of 836 M7 rail cars. So increased utilization has been a result of that amendment.
We have a motion? Second, any comments or questions regarding any of these procurements? All in favor? Aye.
So next on the agenda, we have Metro North and Long Island Railroad. There are 2 procurements for Metro North for a grand total of $1.8 million. One is a non-competitive sole source procurement jointly with Long Island Railroad for a total of $1.3 million, and one is a contract modification for a total of $500,000. There are no procurements for Long Island Railroad.
Could I have a motion? Second? Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Next, we have New York City Transit and MTA bus operations. There is 1 competitive procurement for New York City Transit, which is a request to use the RFP process.
Second, any comments or questions? All in favor?
There are no items selected for bridges and tunnels, and there are no items selected for a FEMTAC.
Sure. Yeah. Jeff, real estate.
Thanks, Doug. Good afternoon. We have 1 action item this month. The staff summary appears at page 107 of your materials, relates to a proposed sale of air rights associated with the event plant at the 96th Street, 2nd Avenue subway station. Unless there are any questions, I would ask for approval of the item.
Moved. Second, comments, questions? All in favor? Aye. That's it. That's it? That concludes the business for finance for today. Could I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? All in favor? Aye.